Okay, we're live. How's it going, everybody? Chuck Holton here. And I am coming to you from my studio in Panama. And tomorrow is the day. It's a big day. You know, one thing you ought to do tomorrow is take a family picture or take a photo of yourselves in front of your house and just, save that someplace because no matter which way it goes, tomorrow is going to be a historic day in America. And so I just wanted to come on today because this is your last chance, folks. It's your last chance to get stocked up and get what you need to get, do what you need to do before the election. Because as I've been saying, I'm not big on predictions, but if I had to predict something, I think I would be pretty safe to make a bet that there will be some sort of election related unrest after tomorrow night because half the country is going to be very unhappy no matter what happens. The polls are neck and neck. We don't have any idea who's going to win. No matter who is declared the winner, the people who lose will without a doubt claim that there was shenanigans going on, and they're going to be very unhappy, and they're going to feel like they have very little option but to get out in the streets and make a ruckus. And so that means that there are certain things that you ought to do to be ready for those shenanigans to take place. And if you're not, you might wish that you had been. Now, I'm not saying the world's going to come to an end, and I'm not saying America's going to come to an end just yet. I'm just saying that because it's such a contentious election, and because of the track record that we have seen in the last few elections of the anger and division getting worse and worse and worse, I think it's a pretty safe bet that there will be some sort of localized or generalized unrest, loss of civility, let's say. So because of that, I wanted to take this opportunity to do a live about this, take a break from talking about Israel for just a little bit because Israel hasn't changed a lot since this morning when I did a live over on CBN's YouTube channel. So you can go watch that. If you go to CBN News on YouTube, you can find where I did a live and watch that one if you want to know what's going on over there. Okay. So let's go through, I want to go through 5 things that you should do before the polls close tomorrow. 5 things you should do. These are not necessarily in any order, but and some of them are kind of Captain Obvious type things, and some of them are not. And so let's go through these just one at a time and talk about them. First of all, I think that you should run over to the ATM and pull out some cash because whenever there is unrest, whenever things are difficult, whether it's a storm or an earthquake or a fire, flood, riots, no matter what, the system that we typically use to pay for things these days in America, which is typically I just double click the button on my phone and pay, boop, and just tap my phone and pay that way. Well, that may not be available for a bit in some places. And I mean, I'm not going to go the full Captain Obvious route here, and I'm not going to tell you to go stock up on food and water. Well, of course, you should always be stocked up on food and water. And, you should always have a little cash on hand too, but you might want to get a little more cash out. It wouldn't hurt. Doesn't really cost anything for you to go get cash out. But if we get some sort of loss of civility, having some cash on hand could actually help out. As a matter of fact, there are some, when I was, okay, I have to back up a little bit. I had a contract for a while through the US State Department to do security consulting for a program that the State Department was running across Latin America. They were hiring like 3,000 college kids, and they were sending them out into all the neighborhoods in Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. And they were getting robbed a lot. And so the State Department hired me to go and talk to all 3,000 of these kids all over these different countries, all in Spanish, give some classes on how to be safer in a challenging environment when you're walking through a bad neighborhood or something like that. And so one of the things that I found out is that these people were doing stupid things and looking like food, meaning, they're standing out in the middle of the street looking at their phones, trying to figure out what house they had to go to next with this job of theirs. And they could have done that in that last house that they just finished with before they went out into the street. But so it was a lot of fairly obvious things like don't stand in the street and look at your phone. But there was one thing that we came up with that actually worked. And that was if somebody was coming up, wanted to rob you or whatever, you just take a bunch of small bills and keep them in your front pocket. Ones and fives would do it. And you just pull them out of your pocket, throw them in the air, and run away while everybody's clamoring to get at your cash. And so for, $20 worth of cash, you have bought yourself a little time to get away. Now, I don't expect the average American to walk around with a wad of cash in their pocket so they can get away. But if you're expecting to have to drive through an area that might be shut down, one of the things that we found here in Panama when they had protests here a while back is that money talks. And these jackwagons were here in Panama. They got all up in arms about a mine that had been here for decades, and all of a sudden decided that it was, stealing the resources of the Panamanian people. No, it was buying them actually from the Panamanian people and hiring the Panamanian people to extract them from the ground. But nevertheless, these people got all upset and they went out, and what they do here in Panama when they get really mad about something is they just go stand in the middle of the street. They just block the roads. I hate that. Oh, I hate that. That is terrorism, plain and simple. It's kidnapping. If you're upset about something and you go stand in the middle of the street and stop traffic and punish a whole bunch of people who have absolutely nothing to do with what you're upset about, you are a terrorist and you should be treated as such. And I could get on my hobby horse about that and go to town because that really chaps my hide. You know what I mean? So anyway, that's what they do here in Panama. And they had roadblocks up and down the roads going all the way into the city and all the way out to Costa Rica. There's only one main road in Panama, so that made it basically the whole country came to a screeching halt. But what some people found is that if they had a little cash on them, you slide $100 somebody's way and they might be willing to step aside for you and let you through if you really wanted to get where you were going. So it just doesn't hurt to have some cash on hand. Now, I want to liken, Cindy Lou, if you have $20 cash, get it in ones and just keep it in your glove compartment. Never hurts. One of the ways that you get out of the situation where you don't have any cash on hand is to start putting aside cash. And I know that might be difficult on a fixed income, but a dollar here, a dollar there leads to $10, leads to $20, leads to $100. You might be surprised how quickly you can save up a little money. So anyway, just that's first idea. I wanted to liken this to what happened in Ukraine as the war was about to start. I was in Ukraine 3 weeks before the war started back in 2022. And I, learned some lessons from being there in Kyiv and out on the red line between the Ukrainian held areas and the militant held areas, or the Russian held areas. This is before the war started, out in the Donbass. I was out there literally 2 days before the war actually started. I was right out there on the line near Donetsk and Luhansk. And, I was kind of taken aback because everybody knew that there was something bad coming. Everybody could see the Russian troops building up along the border. Everybody could hear the belligerent talk from Vladimir Putin, but yet the people in the regions out there along the red line, they weren't doing anything to prepare. They did nothing. And you'd ask them, like, why aren't you stocking up or whatever? And they'd just say, no, nothing's going to happen. They just didn't believe it. They really didn't believe that something out of the ordinary might happen. That's called normalcy bias. Normalcy bias will get you killed. Everything is fine up until it's not. And when it's not, your brain wants to say, no, this can't be. That's not different than what I know. That's just, noise. It's misinformation. That's fake news. I'm not going to believe that. Well, when your house is on fire, it's time to take action. And it might have been a good idea to take action before somebody set it on fire. You know what I mean? So these people in Ukraine were doing nothing. We took the train, got on the train in Kramatorsk, and then got back into Kyiv just the day before the war started. And people in Kyiv were just going about their business like nothing, just doing their thing. And we kept saying, why aren't you guys like getting out of here or preparing or, buying ammo or what? And they're just like, they just didn't believe it. Part of the reason for that was because they had been threatened for so long. They had been, threatened by Russia for so long that they just didn't believe that Russia was actually going to do anything this time. But they did. And when they did, then there were huge traffic jams of people trying to get out of town. There were massive lines in every supermarket, restaurant, you name it. I mean, everything where people could get things that they needed, just all of a sudden was completely packed, and people were just stuck. And of course, we were planning to stay there, so we weren't leaving, but we did have I was not going to be that guy. I saw the tanks and I saw the Russian troops all getting arrayed along the border, and I said, I think there's a real good chance this is going to happen. And so we made some plans beforehand. I went to a Home Depot type store in Ukraine somewhere, and I bought some metal gas cans that sealed real well, that were actually like half size. I bought several of those and went and filled them up with diesel fuel because our car took diesel. And I put them in the back of our vehicle. And then I got a case of water and threw it back there. And I, put some boxes of power bars and stuff back there. We started packing our stuff. Instead, we were staying at a hotel in Kyiv at the time, but we started packing our stuff every night and leaving it by the door along with our body armor, so that if we had to jump up and run, we wouldn't have to waste time, looking for my toothbrush and where did I put my socks, and everything was all ready. It was right there. As a matter of fact, the first, the last night and the first couple nights of the war, the last night before the war, I slept in my clothes because we just had a feeling something was coming. Once the war started, I slept in my clothes a lot because we didn't know if we might have to run for shelter or what have you from the incoming. So we can learn something from this. I'm not saying that our country is going to turn into necessarily a full-on war zone, but it very well might in some places. And if you live close to those places, you might want to maybe, take some steps to be ready. Now, the other thing that I did is I went to every ATM I could find and drained it. Just got as much money out as I possibly could get every day for about 2 weeks before the war started. And man, it's a good thing I did, because we had to hire drivers when we couldn't get a train. The train was stopped. We had to hire security guys. We had to hire, camera guys and stuff like that. And there was no bank open for a couple of weeks after the war started. And so if I didn't have all that cash that I had piled up before the war started, I don't know how we would have made it. We wouldn't have been able to make it. Okay. So Mark N. Twistle says, what about the UK, or are you just talking about America? Right now I'm talking about America because tomorrow is election day here in America. And so I'm thinking things might get a little skippy after that, no matter who gets announced as the winner. Okay, so definitely getting cash is not something you will regret, okay? And small bills are good. And then once you've gotten cash, don't spend it. Just hold on to it until you're sure that things have settled down. And then you can go put it back in the bank or spend it if you need to. Number two, I would definitely make sure that your gas tank is full tomorrow before the polls close. Go to the gas station and fill your tank all the way. You really should never let it get below half tank. I used to get mad at my kids if I ever got in their car and it didn't have at least a half a tank of gas in it. And that's just a good policy to have all the time. I mean, I know there are people out there, I see them, who come in and, they go into the gas station and they'll say, can I get $6 worth of gas? And I go, man, I feel sorry for people like that. And I've been there. I was a person like that a long time ago. There have been times in my life where $6 was about all I could manage for gas and hope that it got me through the week. But if you have the ability, definitely fill up your tank and maybe an extra gas tank or two and put them in your garage and just have them just in case. Very important. There were, when the war started in Ukraine, I was in Kyiv and I had to figure out if the Russians, because everybody was saying the Russians are going to be surrounding Kyiv within 48 hours. And so I'm like, okay, if that happens, they're going to be coming from the north and the east. And so I need to figure out how to get out of Kyiv to the west and the south. But I have to assume that the main roads are going to be impassable, either because they are clogged with so much traffic of other people trying to get out, or because they have been bombed or some other way they've been cut and you can't use them. And so I did a very thorough map reconnaissance of the different routes that I could take. And we even drove two of them to get out of the city at least. And some of them went through farmers' fields, dirt roads over. I mean, we had to make sure that we could get out. And as a matter of fact, that saved our bacon because the second night, I guess, the first night we stayed in the hotel, the second night of the war, it looked like the Russians were approaching. Well, not look like, I mean, they were approaching. They got to the city limits of Kyiv, and we could hear and see fighting going on around us from downtown Kyiv. So it looked like maybe by the morning they might have cut those roads that I was worried about. So we decided to pull out of Kyiv and just move south a little bit. And we had found and identified a like camping cabins place that was closed, but we had talked to the owners and they said they would open up one of the cabins for us, and we would, then they would provide us with meals and stuff while we were there if we needed it. And we ended up using that about 2 or 3 times when we had to pull out of Kyiv right there at the beginning where it was really touch and go for a couple of weeks. So we did that and we used those back roads and got out. And I was able to lead a group of other people who were trying to get out of the country. And like I say, the main roads were completely clogged. And so I was able to lead this guy who had rented a big van, 16-person van, and show him the dirt roads and stuff that we had found to get out of the city through suburbs and then more rural areas in order to get to, I think he was going to Hungary, if I remember right. Went to the Hungarian border. But then, I had to have all that planned out. So before the war started, I had sat down, and there was a guy there who was the head of the UN security, and his daughter was the other reporter that was traveling with me. And he was very concerned about her. So I had sat down with him, and I'd shown him all the plans I had, the routes, everything. And he was like, okay, you know what you're doing. So I feel good about her being with you. So you're fine. So one of the things I had to do was come up with a distance. I had to figure out the exact distance using those routes I had taken to get to the border, because we had to imagine that there would not be any fuel available. And as it turned out, we were right. All the fuel stations in the country shut down and were only open for military, right? And so if we needed to get out of the country, I had to have enough range in my car to get us all the way out of Ukraine. And we didn't. My car didn't have that kind of range. And so what I had to do was buy enough extra fuel cans and stash them in the back of the vehicle in order to give us the range that we needed to get out of the country if that was the case. And then I had to make sure that every time we passed a filling station that happened to be open, and they were few and far between, even if it took us a couple of hours to wait in line, we had to get in line, and then we had to fill up our tank and make sure it was completely topped off. Okay? So I'm telling you all this because I have personal experience in it, and maybe it's the post-traumatic stress talking, but it never hurts to have a full gas tank. Happiness is a full gas tank, okay? And maybe a little extra, okay? So if you don't have a passport, folks, why? I've read somewhere that only about 35% of Americans actually have passports, but there may come a time when you want to leave the United States for whatever reason, for vacation or for some other reason. And having a passport is just one of those being prepared kind of things. Even if you don't think you'd use it, never hurts to have it. They're not that expensive. So wouldn't hurt to put in for one. Now, yeah, this is also one good reason why you probably don't want to have an electric car. next. Establishing a communications plan. This is something, no audio. Testing, 1, 2. Okay. What happened? Somebody said the audio went out, but I've got audio here. Yeah, we got audio. Okay. All right. So part number 3, establish a communications plan. Establishing a clear communications plan with your family, close friends, your church. If you belong to a church and you're a third age person, that's what they call them here in Panama. They don't call them elderly, they call them third age. And if you're the kind of person who might need some assistance if things go bad, then does your deacon at your church have your number and know to call you if things go sideways, just to check on you? Do you have the number of a person like that from your church or your community? Somebody you know that is a shut-in or maybe is crippled or whatever, might need help in a bad situation. So this is a very good idea, and you should establish this now. Just give somebody a call and say, hey, by the way, if anything ever goes crazy, I'm going to send you a 1-word text that says pray. And if I send you a 1-word text that says pray, number 1, please pray. And number 2, call me or try to get a hold of me and find out what's wrong, because that means something bad is happening. Okay. Neo asks what I think of Bitcoin. I don't think it's something that, well, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole just now. Thank you, Lily. I appreciate that. All right. So now part of establishing a comms plan is not just making sure that you have written down a list of important numbers, like people, let's say that you get incapacitated for whatever reason, and your neighbor finds you laying in your driveway having had a heart attack or something. They need to know who to get in touch with. We have this happen here in Panama all the time. There are a lot of retirees that live here in Panama with us in our little town, and they'll get sick or have a heart attack or die, God forbid. And we've had that happen. And they don't leave any information. Nobody knows how to get a hold of their next of kin. And it's a real problem. So you should have a list written on your refrigerator of names and numbers of people that your neighbor could call if something goes wrong. Now, while you're at it, on the other side of that list, you should write down the numbers and names of all of the people that are your neighbors. Everybody around you on either side of you, you should have their number, not just in your phone. You should have it written down, because if your phone dies and you have to borrow somebody else's phone, they're not going to have those numbers in it. So write them down. If you don't have a written communication plan with those phone numbers on it, you don't have a plan. It's got to be written down in pen and ink. Okay? This is not hard stuff. This is something that you could be doing while I'm talking about it. Okay? Just grab a piece of paper, grab a pen, start scribbling out the names of your kids and their phone numbers and their addresses and their emails or whatever, and flip the paper over and put down the names and numbers of your neighbors. And oh, by the way, if you don't know your neighbors, that's a problem. That's part of the reason why I wrote my book. My book, Death of Civilization, is because nobody knows their neighbors anymore. And we should. Okay? We should know our neighbors. So if you don't know them, then walk next door and just say, hey, I'm putting together a communications plan for my neighborhood. And would you mind if I get your phone number just in case, something goes wrong or I find your dog or whatever? Can I just get your contact info? here so I can call you if necessary. And then, you know, put it on your refrigerator. Just put it somewhere where somebody else could find it if they needed to do so. All right? This is not so hard. It's not that bad. Now, one of the things that our family does that I would suggest to you is an app called Life 360. Life 360 is an app that looks like, let's see, it's that purple app right there. See the purple one? It's got a little arroba sign, a little ampersand sign on it. Okay? It's a little purple box with an ampersand sign. And if I click that box, what it does is it shows me where all of my family are, anywhere in the world. So if I pull up the map there, I can see where my wife is, where my kids are. Even my son who's in Armenia is on there. I can see right where they are. I can see if they're moving. I can see, actually I'll get alerted if they get into a car crash. And it's not very expensive. They have a free version of this plan. It looks like one of my kids is driving right now. Yeah, my daughter is driving at the moment. So I highly recommend this because this app makes it very easy to keep track of people. And I even use it to find my wife in the Walmart sometimes, or at the airport or something like that. Now, there are other apps that'll do that. And if you have an Apple phone, the Find My will do that as long as everybody in your family has an Apple device. And it'll find your stuff too, which is helpful. And I use that as well. But that can be part of your communications plan. Now, another thing that I'm going to lump in with the communications plan is having just a map plan. I want to talk about two things in particular. Number one, let me go to the map here. What I'm going to show you is a neighborhood in Reno, Nevada, where my mother used to live before she died. Okay. And I want to show you a neighborhood because it's just a typical American neighborhood. And so if I pull up a map of this neighborhood, it'll show me every house on this map. It's just a standard Google map. It'll show me every house. And so if I live in this house, let's say, and that happens to be 7180 Discovery Lane, well, then I can actually start print this map out if I want and start writing the names of my neighbors up and down the street. And if I see, let's say I see a guy that's got a bunch of gun stickers on the back of his truck, always parked 3 doors down from me, I might make a note. This guy apparently likes guns. Just little things like that. If I notice that a guy's got a construction truck parked out in front of his house because he works in construction, I might make a note of that, because if my sink blows up or I need some help, then I definitely might give that guy a call, right? Does that make sense? Okay, so one of the things about this neighborhood is that it has a neighborhood watch program that's well established. And your neighborhood might have one too, and you just don't know about it. So I actually found this neighborhood watch program by asking ChatGPT what neighborhood my mom lived in and whether or not there was a neighborhood watch program or something like it in that neighborhood. And sure enough, there's a neighborhood called the Cabernet Highlands Neighborhood Watch Program, and they have a website, and you can report incidents. You can volunteer to help out. They have meetings and stuff. They've actually had this neighborhood watch since the 1970s, I think, over there. And it shows, this picture shows where their neighborhood is, and so what's covered by their neighborhood watch program. It's actually very organized. So isn't that cool? Uh, so look at Nora Dorsey said she took my advice and now she knows 8 of her neighbors. That's fantastic. Good for you, Nora. Fantastic. It's a good time to get to know your neighbors. And it's also a good time to get to know your neighbors because of the political divisions that we have in our country. Especially if your neighbor has a sign out in his yard that is the other team, the other party, the party you don't support, it'd be a great time to go get to know them and let them get to know you. And, here in Panama, we've done that. We don't have a lot of choice here in Panama because there are so few English speaking gringos that live in our neighborhood that are in our town that beggars can't be choosers. We have to be friends with everybody. And, what's funny is we've heard many times after we've gotten to know people that we knew were very liberal, New Agers or somebody that definitely is not the kind of people that I would hang around with in my normal Christian barrio, and they'll say, well, wait a minute, aren't you conservatives? Aren't you Republicans? Aren't you Christians? Yes, but you're so nice. They'll say, but you're so nice. Well, what that tells you is that we don't actually hate the other side as much as we think we do. What we hate is a caricature of the other side. The people on the other side of the aisle are people just like us, and mostly they just want the things we want. And we disagree about a lot of stuff, but there's still a lot of stuff that we can be friends over. And actually here in Panama, I've learned that some of the people I enjoy spending time with the most are actually very, very, very opposite of us in terms of their politics and their worldview. And they're extremely interesting people because, believe me, they will expose you to things that you didn't know were things, right? And they give you the chance to actually display the love of Christ to people who are on the other side. And that's exactly what we ought to be doing, okay? We shouldn't be trying to, fight the other side. We should stand up for what we believe without a doubt, but we don't have to hate our neighbors in the process. So if I'm going to love my neighbor as myself, that especially applies if my neighbor does not think like me, does not look like me, does not act like me, does not believe the way I believe. So we should definitely do that. Rhonda says our closest neighbor is over a mile away. Then I bet you know them fairly well, don't you? Because when you live in a place like that, you tend to get to know your neighbors. I know some people who live in places like that, and neighbors are even more valuable when there are precious few of them. If you're in New York, boy, Cindy, I would be looking to say, how do I get out of my neighborhood and how do I get out of my state if things go bad? Now, let's do that over here. Let's look at this map again. So if I zoom out from my mom's neighborhood and we see Interstate 395 here going up north through Sparks out of Reno. Now, I can guess that the most likely places where there would be unrest centered around the election would be somewhere around downtown Reno. But that could definitely extend out to where I am if I need to use Interstate 35, because what people in our day and age like to do is go stand in the road when they get mad about things and block traffic. And so I might want to actually take my car out and go for a little drive and figure out if I had to get to the other side of Reno, let's say I had to get to Carson City or somewhere like that, how would I do it if I couldn't take Interstate 395? Well, if I look at the map here, there's a very windy mountain road that goes this way up over Peavine Peak. But having been there, I can tell you, I've reconned this myself. It's a dirt road, so you would need a four-wheel drive to make that. So let's say you don't have a four-wheel drive. That's not going to work. So I'm going to go back to my neighborhood and I'm going to look this direction. And well, if I take 7th Avenue, that's a nice paved road, over to Pyramid Way, and then go down. I can take this road around right here and go down by the water park, go down through Hidden Valley, and boom, I'm on the other side of Reno. Okay? So I'm just using this as an example, but this is what a map reconnaissance looks like. This is how you do one. If you've never done a map reconnaissance, you might not know what I'm even talking about. So this is all part of your communications plan and security plan to get out of Dodge, if you need to do that, with your car that's filled up to the brim with gas and your pocket full of cash that you just took out of the bank. Okay? Now, let's move on to the next subject. The next, number 4, is go out and invest in some precious metals. Now, if you think I'm talking about stuff like this is a 1 ounce silver coin. Sure, if you want to go get some silver or some gold, go right ahead. It's at a very high price right now because of the uncertainty out there. And so now is not a great time to buy it. But if you don't have any and you might want to store some wealth in a way that would be easy to travel with and use if the currency collapses or something like that, then yeah, go get some precious metals like this. But that's not actually what I was talking about. What I'm talking about in terms of precious metals is something that I can't directly say on YouTube, okay? Because it will get me demonetized. But what I'm talking about is precious metals like this, okay? Go get yourself some precious metals like this, because these are going to be more and more valuable as time goes on. Even if you're not an avid sportsman, even if you're not concerned about your personal safety, having some precious metals like this actually is a great store of wealth. Because do you think that the taxes on these things are going to go up or down in the future? They're going to go up. Do you think that the likelihood of being able to purchase these things will get easier or harder in the future? It's going to get harder. And so these things will probably go up in value faster than things like this. And I would say that, look, I met a guy in New York one time. He was a money manager for like a wealth fund, and he had bought 20 million rounds of this. Why? Not because he was an avid sportsman. He bought those precious metals because he believed that they would go up faster than the other kind of precious metals, okay? So it's, even if you don't own a tool, it's not a bad idea to go buy a couple boxes of precious metals. And even if you don't have anything to use them with, you can always use them to barter with your neighbor for some groceries or something else if things really went bad. But I'm telling you, you're not going to lose money on those things, because if you need to sell them at some point in the future, there's a very good likelihood that the price will be higher than they are today, depending on who gets elected and what happens. Actually, either way it goes, right? So that's number 4. Now let's talk about number 5. The 5th is the most important thing you need to do before the polls close tomorrow. And that is, you need to say a prayer. You need to get on your knees and ask God to save America. Get on your knees and say, God, I don't talk to you a whole lot, but if you're out there, please save our country. Please don't give us the leaders that we deserve. Please don't even give us the leaders that we want. Give us the leaders that we need so that America can be saved, can continue to be a shining city on a hill. This is always the best thing you can do. First and foremost, always the most important thing you can do in every situation. And I can tell you, from having lived on this earth for 55 years and followed Christ for about 50 of those, that prayer works. Look, there was a time when I'm just going to give you one example of that just so that you'll believe me. When I was on a mission in Syria a couple of years ago with the Free Burma Rangers, we did a very, very dangerous mission one day to try to rescue a wounded Kurdish soldier who had been left behind enemy lines when his unit fell back as the ISIS guys were attacking them. And this guy hid. He was shot in the leg, but he hid. And he started calling his commander on the phone. It's another good reason to have people's numbers. You know, maybe somebody you never intend to call, but might not be a bad idea to have that number just in case. I've got thousands of numbers in my phone, and I'm just happy to have them. So this guy called his commander and said, hey, I'm hiding and I can hear them. They're outside the building. They're looking for me, but they haven't found me. Please save me. And the commander came to our team of Free Burma Rangers. We had a couple of armored ambulances. And he said, would you go in and get him? And we kind of looked at each other like, oh, and I'm not going to tell the whole story about that. That's a story for another day. Suffice it to say, after 3 tries and one close ambush on us, we managed to rescue this guy and get him out of there. And it was after dark by the time we did. So by the time we got him to the hospital, which was an hour away, we were going to come back to the place where we had been staying, which was much closer to the front lines. We'd been staying there for a week or so, and it was within sight of the ISIS positions that were maybe a mile from us down the hill. But we had just taken over an abandoned house, somebody's house, and we were just staying in there. But when we pulled up, it was probably 11 o'clock at night. We were completely wiped out. And we started getting out of our vehicles, and we all stopped and we said, hey, let's say a prayer of thanks that we got that guy out alive and all of us still have all our parts and pieces. So we prayed and said thanks to God for getting us out of there. And then when we got done, one of the guys said, guys, I don't know about you, but I just don't feel good about us staying here tonight. And we kind of looked at each other, and one of the other guys said, you know what? I feel that way too. I don't feel very good about us being here. I don't think this is a good place for us to sleep tonight. And I'm sitting there going, oh, come on. Because if we don't sleep here, we're going to have to pack everything up. We can't leave our stuff behind. It's going to take us an hour. It'll be 1 o'clock in the morning by the time we get back to some place where we can stay safely. And I was so tired. I was like, forget it. I just want to lay down and go to sleep right now. And one of our mottos is, I will not be motivated by comfort, fear, or pride. And so I recognized right away that I was about to make a decision based on comfort, and that's a good way to get killed. So our leader, Dave Eubank, said, hey, let's pray about it again. Let's just pray, and we'll see how we feel. So we prayed that God would give us wisdom about whether or not we should stay there that night. And when we got done, we looked around and it was unanimous. We all felt it. Not a good idea for us to stay here tonight. So we packed everything up and drove another hour back to the hotel. We slept on the roof of the hotel, froze to death. It was no fun at all. And the next morning, we got a call from the Kurdish commander, and he said, how did you guys know to leave last night? And we said, what do you mean? He said, oh man, ISIS attacked that position last night, and there were 4 Kurdish guys that had gone and decided to stay there. And they thought we were crazy as we were packing up in the middle of the night. But 2 of those guys had been killed. 1 had gotten captured, and 1 got away and to tell the story. So prayer works. It has worked many times in my life. And you should always ask for discernment. So if you doubt some of the things I'm telling you today about whether or not you need to go get cash, whether or not you need to go invest in some precious metals, whatever, just ask God. Just pray. Should I really take this seriously? And just see how you feel. It's not like he's going to send you an email, but you'll get a sense in your spirit of what you should do, and then follow that. Okay. So I highly believe that that's a good 5-step thing that you should do before the polls close tomorrow. Number 1, get some cash out. Number 2, fill up your gas tank. Number 3, get your communication plan together with who you're going to call if things go sideways. Number 4, get some precious metals. And number 5, get on your knees and pray. Now, I have a bonus point here that I want to make. And this is something that we do from time to time at our house. And I think that it's a good practice to get into. And we used to call it our family photo day. When our kids were little, once a month, we'd have a family photo day, and we'd just give our kids the cameras or the phones and tell them to go around and take pictures of stuff during the day, just to put a marker down and to, have a record of what our lives were like on that day every month. But what that sort of turned into was I got to realize after a while we're taking pictures, I should take pictures of everything in our house. I should go around our house and take a picture of every wall of every room in our house, especially take pictures of every big ticket item, anything expensive, take pictures of the serial numbers of those things. Thank you to Ford. Because pictures are cheap. But if a flood, fire, earthquake, mob, thief, you never know what, goes through your house, you need to have a record of what was in it and that you can turn over to the insurance company. And so it doesn't hurt to make a home photo inventory from time to time. And tomorrow's as good a time as any. So if you have a chance, maybe go take pictures of stuff in your house and just put them up online somewhere. Go to Flickr, Flickr, and upload them there. I get an account, upload them, make them private so nobody else can see them. But then if you need them, they're available no matter what. Not a bad idea. Okay, let's see if we have any other questions here. I wanted to actually point out, if you have not got the book, go to chuckholton.com and go to right there on the top of the page. There's a post that says Death of Civilization. That's the book that I just released on this topic. And it's got some of these checklists in it. And as I've said, the book is a free download for people who support my work. So if you become a supporter, $7 a month, you can download that book and my book about how to form an emergency preparedness team at your church. And I would suggest that you go and do that. It might be too late to put some of the things into practice that are in the book, but they're better late than never. Get the book and start going through it. If you want to skip the whole first half and just cut right to the checklists at the back, it's definitely worth it. Feel free to print it off. Feel free to share it with your friends. And look, if you cannot afford it, if you can't afford $7, I understand. I've been there. So just send an email to my daughter, Amy. Her email is amy@holtonnews.com. I had to think about it for a minute. amy@holtonnews.com. And she will send you a free download of the book if you can't afford it. Thank you, TJ. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. Lynette Crawford says, what do you think? Well, let me tell you what I think. I think 49 is a really good number. And that's all I have to say about that. Okay, so Diane Britson says, my passport is due to expire shortly. Jeep battery died and needs a shop. Lost my cell phone. Boy, you're just having a go of it, aren't you, Diane? You better get... Oh, man, you're going to have to work pretty hard to get your act together and get things back together. I hope it works out for you, Diane. I saw somebody else that asked if I was still running on my emergency passport. No, I'm not. That thing was completely full. I mean, I was down to just like one page left within a couple of months. And so I actually got it reissued, a new passport issued, while we were in Armenia this year, because I was going to spend so much time in Armenia anyway that I figured I could do that. KP1 says, I finished the book yesterday. We were actually set up due to the hurricane season. That's good. And this book will help you if you're in Hurricane Alley. It'll help you if there are fires or earthquakes or any other kind of natural disaster. I highly recommend you get the book. Is there a way you can speak what type of precious metals would be best to get for bartering? Well, the kind that starts with 9mm is a very good kind to get for bartering because it is kind of universal. It is the most commonly used caliber, and so that the nines are good. You also, well, we'll just leave it at that. Yeah. So let's see. What book, Juanita Haney? My book, Death of Civilization. Go to chuckholton.com and you can see it there. If you become a supporter, you can download it and read it. Okay. Highly recommend you do that. Question. Another channel reported the U.S. is sending 7 B-52s along with fighter jets in the Middle East. Yeah, Mike, go to my live I did on CBN News this morning. And I did a whole hour live about that very topic. Talked all about it, explained everything about what B-52s can do, what that might mean for the region. And so I highly recommend you go to CBN News here on YouTube and do that. Please, if you haven't subscribed to the podcast, folks, please do that. Just hit the subscribe button there. Only about half the people who are, watching this are actually subscribed. And I don't understand that. It's free. It doesn't hurt. It's very helpful. It tells YouTube that a lot more people need to see this. So just hit that subscribe button. Priscilla says, Trump coins, what about those? Are they worth anything? No, they're not. And I would not suggest you get any kind of, goofy, what do you call those? Affinity coins. Okay. Like, I really love hockey, so I'm going to get an NHL coin. Well, you know what? Most people don't love hockey, and so they're not going to go for that. If you get a Trump silver coin, they're minting those, and they are made of silver, and they're worth exactly the same as one of these in terms of weight. But if you have Trump coins and you go try to spend them if America falls apart, half the people that might want to do business with you are probably going to want to, throw you in a hole instead because they don't like Donald Trump. So just get your normal, this is a Walking Liberty, it's called, coin. I don't know if you can see that. I think it's out of focus. Walking Liberty. It's got Liberty on the front. It's got the a seal of America on the back. Get those, or if you're buying gold, get Krugerrands or something that's very, very easy to barter, okay? But just keep in mind that if you get this kind of precious metal, it's not going to be as easy to spend as you think it will be. This is actually a good way to save money because it's hard to get rid of. You got to find somebody else who's into that sort of thing. A lot of other people are going to say, what am I going to do with that? I want a can of beans. I don't want this. So maybe before you get a bunch of this, make sure you got plenty of cans of beans, right? Let's see. Somebody just said, shoot, this went away. Should we buy coins or 1 ounce bars? Doesn't really matter. There's plenty of places online where you can buy them. Like I say, Therese, junk silver has its purpose, but most people have no idea about junk silver. And so if you have junk silver, before we get to the point where you're going to need this kind of currency, you're going to need a lot of US dollars, like $20 bills. So if you don't have thousands of dollars saved in $20 bills, then if you have this stuff, you're probably doing it backwards. You should have actual US cash before you go to this. And junk silver, I get it. You know, if the whole world falls apart, this is going to be worth like a car or something. It's way too much to just buy groceries with. And so junk silver is a way where you have much smaller pieces of silver that you can spend for a cart of groceries or something. I get it. But I think what I'm talking about just over the next, weeks, months, and maybe years, I don't think we're going to be at this point in the very near term, but you never know. And so it doesn't hurt to have a little bit of it and, put it aside if you can. Okay. Let's see. Junk silver. A lot of people talking about junk silver, making your own bread, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. So you don't know how to download Morgan? There's a link. I think it's pinned to the top. Well, here's the link. Tell you what, I'll put the link to the actual book, Morgan, in the chat right now. Okay. So, there we go. Let me get the link to the actual book. And I'm going to post it right now in the chat. And if you click on that link, it will take you to a page and ask you to sign up as a supporter. And if you're already a supporter, it'll just ask you to sign in, and then you can get the book. All you have to do is just click on the thing that says Death of Civilization Standard Print Ready .pdf. And you click on that, and it will, it'll be readable. You just open it on your computer and read it on your computer. Thank you, P-Dub. I appreciate that. Chuck, I'm a Christian. I may not agree with you politically, but I enjoy listening to you. Respect, appreciate you. God bless. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Okay, so that is all I've got for tonight. We're just hitting an hour, so let's do what I suggested we do in point number 5, and let's say a prayer for our country, okay? Lord God, I come to you right now and just ask that you put your hand on America. Lord, I know that we don't deserve it. I know that so much of America has just turned their back on you, that they have thrown away your precepts. They mocked you, Lord, in their lifestyle, in their worldview, in their words, and in their actions. They have clamored for sexual freedom over true freedom. They have clamored to murder their children rather than know the joy of giving birth to those children. And Father, my heart is broken for those people, for people who are so depraved to believe that it's an exercise of freedom to murder a precious little child in the womb. Father, I pray that you would open their eyes and their hearts, that you would help them to see just what a true evil that is. And not only an evil, but what a destructive path that is for America, to be killing our next generation of taxpayers, Lord. So I just pray that you would cause people to rise up and to go out and vote. And Lord, I pray that you would, again, not give us the leaders that we want, not give us the leaders we deserve. Please, no. Give us the leaders that we need to draw us closer to you. And Lord, if that happens to be Kamala Harris, because the terrors that will be inflicted on our country over the next 4 years, if Kamala Harris gets elected, will draw us closer to you, then give us what we need, Lord. We trust you. You are our leader, Lord, and you rise up kings and take them down. And so we trust you. We put our faith and our trust in you, and not in the political process, not in a clean election. We put our trust in you, Father. And I pray that you would just see fit to let America go back to being the safe and peaceful and free place that so many of us remember it being. I pray, Lord, that you would allow your word to go forth unhindered inside America. And I pray for the people who are running the polls, pray for the people who are out there, the law enforcement that are securing the polls. I just pray that you would keep this process safe and that it would be transparent and clean, Lord, and that people could trust it. And we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, folks, thank you very much for watching. And we'll see you again tomorrow. If you haven't voted, please do so. Take care. Bye-bye.